Hello and welcome to Great Train Layouts Live. I'm your host Nick Ozerak, and you are joining us here for another fun evening of working on a virtual train layout that exists in the real world and learning what we can here in Train Z Railroad Simulator as a testing ground for scenery ideas. In fact, that's what this project, the Conrail P&L branch, is all about. My good buddy Rudy has commissioned me to take his train layout, which he has built. He has laid the track for it. He has come up with the track plan, but there is not any permanent scenery at this point. So I am helping him to explore potential avenues of how to bring this layout to life visually. Last time, 3 weeks ago when we were streaming, we were looking at the staging area and the town of Lingelstown. Today, we're going to be looking at some industrial park and some urban decay and have some fun with that. Happy to be joined by you, White Star. Glad to see you're in here, Rudy. You can critique my work along the way. And Rich, good to see you as well. Glad that you could join us tonight. So first, let's take a look. We'll do a quick review of what's already been scenic and talk a little bit about this plan for those of you who were not here last week. If you're having difficulty hearing me because of the music or anything like that, please let me know. But I have not heard anything, which means I haven't muted my microphone, which is a good start to things. Let's get into it. So the P&L branch, fictional Conrail branch line, based in central Pennsylvania. Let's turn off the track plan. We can actually look at what we've got. We've got the staging yard here, which represents the link to the outer Conrail network. We've got some nice trees and so forth. I think some of that we may have had already, but we just added a bit more. We've got some clutter down on the ground because yards always have some form of clutter. Yard office. This we just left as one of the few sort of in-between locations we have on this layout. This layout is predominantly built around the idea of switching, so there's not a lot of traveling from one place to another. So it's worth making the most of it where we have it, and especially where it's not centered around a town or industry. So this, I see just going with nice trees and leaving it very open. We came up with the idea of this scenic divider here as a means of separating this from the town of Lingelstown. That said, Rudy mentioned after the fact that they might not be able to, given the space that they're working in, they might not be able to put up walls there, in which case that's not a problem. We put this on a toggle layer so we could see what this would look like without the walls. And even without it, if you build up enough green growth here, and maybe just a lower profile divider, but even without any sort of divider, I think there's a nice separation here. This feels like a self-contained scene. This track here is our main line, and the foreground track is our yard lead, including the switch off to here. The town of Lingelstown was our focus last time, and that was a lot of fun to explore its scenic possibilities and how to realize certain industries. For example, I knew from the track plan that Rudy and Carolyn wanted a coal or some type of coal dump. So I came up with the idea of having this abandoned trestle. So back in the day, there used to be track that went up to the trestle and the hoppers dumped below. Now there's some other way, like presumably, I don't know, maybe that you'd have like a conveyor or something that gets it off of the hoppers, but this trestle's out of service. It's overgrown. This park is the thing that I'm the most happy about, because so often with layouts, you don't have that width going for you. This is a 4-foot wide space in HO scale, so you don't typically have the luxury of a deep scene like this because you have to keep the track close. But in this design, this whole peninsula is accessible. I'm going to see my mouse is off, so I'm going to turn my mouse back on for you guys, so when I'm highlighting things, you actually see what I'm talking about. let's try that. Yeah, now you see me. Okay, so this peninsula around here is accessible. Ergo, you can walk over and access the track here and here, so you're not leaning over. So why not do a nice city park? And everybody's favorite, Moo Moo's ice cream joint. I mean, come on, is that not the cutest thing you've seen? I certainly think it's particularly cute. We've got Moo Moo's, which is one of these nice opportunities to have a little bit of commercial industry, or well, non-industry, I should say, commercial business represented here, not specific to the railroad. And it makes me think of places I've been to where you can sit right next to the track. And especially since this is 1979, we don't need no stinking fences. Well, maybe we have a couple here and there just to provide some variety. Encourage you guys to participate in the chat and fire off any questions you have as we're going along in this process. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on what we're embarking on. So, what are we embarking on? Well, we've got this cement plant over here. This big empty area, we're going to turn the walls back on for that. That's a staircase, so we don't have that to play with scenically. Yes, John Overman, you gotta love Moo-Moos. It's the truth. We'll put the walls back on, and you'll see what we've got space-wise. So this isn't going to be too... this space kind of speaks for itself in terms of what's going to happen with it. We'll get into a little bit of super detailing with it, perhaps. Then if we look at the plan here... we have what's designated as a warehouse. I have to go back to my reference photo. So in the link for this video, you'll see a link to Rudy's and Carolyn's website that has information about this railroad and its fictional history. I believe it's just Conrail79.com, if I'm not mistaken. I have to bring up the window that has that in there. But Rudy also took the liberty of sending me some photos to be able to make sure that I had the track accurate in terms of its placement and get a sense of what buildings he already has available and what those look like. So I'm just going to bring up those reference photos because I don't think he had a building placed for here yet, so we might go building shopping a little bit and place something in there. So, the cement plant we're going to be working on, this warehouse scene over here. And then we have this big industrial park here, which has something like 4 or 5 different industries contained with it in it. That's going to be... well, again, we'll get into some super detailing, and I don't want to be stuck with too much parts shopping. But hopefully by the end of tonight, you'll get a sense of... I don't think we're finishing this, but I think we'll at least get the base layers down. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, I think perhaps what I'm most excited with for tonight's build is we've got this in-between section right here. And yes, it is just a curve. There's nothing fancy about it per se, but I've got an idea that's going to make it pretty fun. And I think the theme to what we're exploring tonight as a whole is, and this layout in general, is this idea of urban decay. We want this to be a region that feels like it's been lived in. I mean, this is the 70s, so the rail lines are not new, the industries are not new, maybe a couple of them are, but this sense of this sense of lived history, especially when you're doing something fictional, the more you make it feel like there's a backstory to it. We talked about that with Commonwealth, but here in this case, it's not a fictional railroad, but it's still a fictional branch. So having some sense of purpose and history to it, I think gives a richer experience, both when you're playing it and when you're operating it with your friends. So I am looking for the PL. There we are, and then I can just double check my reference photos to see what we've got here. And yep, it's as I suspected. Right now the warehouse is just a ramp. Reading your comments. If you are doing the dig holes, I have a question about curved fascia and dig holes. I'm probably not going to do the dig holes tonight, but I'm guessing your question is, how do you do curved fascia? So we'll talk about that briefly, since you brought it up. Oh, and Rudy says did not have the wedge-shaped warehouse, so we'll have some fun figuring out the warehouse scene. And yes, Derpy, we're back at it again with hopefully satisfying layout building. Okay, so one of the downsides with trains, and I try to work around this as a point when building layouts, trains admittedly is not friendly when it comes to doing curved fascia. It really likes it when you're working with square, grid, perfection. It does not like curves. So if you're going to do a curve, you need some type of ground texture that you could use in the place of the dig holes. So I'm trying to think. I think there's HD textures. I have to search something and just let's see about ground. So there are such things as, well, I'll use this water. Can I? Nah, that's not quite what I want to use as an example. Those are poles. Ground spline. Okay. I guess we'll use this as an example, and we'll just make the fascia a bit narrower as a result. So there are splines that you can then place and then curve to give a little bit of to make corners. The problem with that is then you need them to match with the surrounding scenery, which doesn't always work or look right. So here's a rough approximation of a curve. I'm just demonstrating this really quickly because this isn't going to be permanent, and I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with just trainsy stuff. I want to be talking general model railroading, hence why you're here. But if we place a dig hole, we'll place a 2x2 there. You can see that now you're seeing this curved fascia. You're seeing it as a hole, and we're using this ground to plug in, this spline to plug in the hole. That's basically how I do curved fascia. How often do I do curved fascia? As little as possible, because it is such a pain. It is such a nuisance to work with. Wanted to turn on my light while I'm thinking of it, maybe. So we'll undo all that work. But that, hopefully that answers your question as a little bit of a primer. My answer is ultimately, if you can avoid doing peninsulas, then just avoid them. That's the best solution of all, because then you just don't have to worry about how to deal with those pesky corners. To give you a sense of how I did that on this layout, over here, this peninsula, or this edge of the layout, is curved, basically where you see the dirt, and I just filled that in with field. And that's what I would recommend you do as well. Okay, so let's look at this scene we've got going here. I'm pretty sure I've left the edges accurate to the track plan. I'm going to double check that. Okay, I built the edge in a little bit from where it actually is, but we'll just leave that kind of dirt space flexible to represent the fact that that doesn't exist in the physical world. So part of what I did before I streamed with you guys, even the first time, was trying to find some general industries that I thought could work. And I've got these ones placed already, and I'm pretty happy with them. Let's see what we've got as far as warehouses. And one of the benefits, if you're not used to working with trains with a Z, first, welcome. Hopefully I could help you learn the ropes of train Z route building a little bit, because even if you're not primarily a simmer or you don't see yourself as one, there's so much that you can learn. You could, if you learn how to use it for your model railroad design purposes, it's such a great tool. And one of the great things is the fact that there are so many assets already available in the game. There's so many that are available for, I like that building. We'll use that for something. There's so many assets available for the game, and there's so many things you can download off the download station that you can pretty much find what you need as placeholders to give you a sense of what you're building towards. Let's see what we want to go with here. Yeah, this might be a nice one. I'm kind of trying to vary it. Like I sort of want to make the warehouse a bit lower than... Oh, and that's what we use for the newspaper plant anyway. So, nope, we're not doing that one twice. I'm trying to look for something that's relatively low profile because I want it to be a little bit different. I've also got some ideas for this transition element, and I don't want the warehouse to kind of overshadow that scene because I think that's going to make it nice in its own right. That's kind of a nice building. Bit, yeah. I mean, I like it. I think it's a bit too... It's a bit too pronounced. I mean, it works as a warehouse. So Rudy could always stop me there and be like, oh, that's exactly what I have in mind. But let me see if we can find something a little bit more modern and a little more like this. Now, this one's a bit too big for the space we have. That's the one challenge I find building these model railroads is coming up with a reasonable amount of space. Because these buildings are often designed to go on Train Z routes that are full size, and we're looking to have smaller industries often rather than larger ones. I like this as a building. It's maybe a tad big as a warehouse. The only thing is it closes off this whole area scenically, and that's why I want that low profile. So I'm thinking more like this height. I'm sure I have other warehouses that can fit the needs. But in a way, hopefully shopping through buildings like this gives you a sense of kind of the different directions you could take when you're selecting your structures. And if you're in a position of selecting your structures rather than your structures selecting you, which is to say that you don't... It's not like you bought a specific kit and you have to make that kit work, but more like you're coming up with the space and you're going to make your kit fit the plan as a whole. Then that gives you more flexibility. Sometimes it's unavoidable. I'll admit, so I'm a big Canadian Pacific guy, as I may have mentioned on the show before. And there's a company called Canna Model, and I've purchased a number of their assets. Oh, there's me blending the train sim and model railroading terms. I've purchased a number of their kits, and these are, I have actually a piece of it here. It's wood kits. The reason it's stuck here is because I'm a perfectionist and I worry I'm gonna screw it up. So far it looks okay, but this is a section house, by the way. But the point is, like, I'm gonna build the section house to be a section house, and it has to fit the specific space. If you're working with something like a warehouse and it's like, hey, I'm gonna kit bash a warehouse or scratch build one to fit the space, then that's better. I like that. I mean, yes, it's close to our fascia, but I like it as a structure. It's low. I mean, yes, the ideal would be to have a warehouse that fits in this triangle. I can say that I don't think I'm going to find that easily. So I don't want to get too down that path of things. Ooh, that's a nice building. I don't think we have use for it today, but it's a nice building. Can I use it as a backdrop for a thing? Not really, but it's cool. We'll use that one another time, I'm sure, for something. But here we go. Here's a warehouse that I think, even if this isn't kind of the final thing we stick with, I'm gonna say we're gonna stick with it for the time being. And when I release the final version of this route, because as you know, if you've been watching the show previously, all of these route projects we build both for these live episodes of Great Train Layouts Live, as well as What Makes This Layout Great, are all going to be available for free download, including this one. So I might do some tweaking after the live stream today. Yeah, JR Generic Warehouse. I think I already tried that one. Yep. and it is just way, way, way too big for what we need. So we're gonna stick with the. Oh, and Rudy says I was gonna put a wedge-shaped warehouse between the two sidings there. But I'm not 100% married to that idea, and I do not have a building selected yet. Well, for the sake of keeping the momentum going, and because I like the thing I like about having the warehouse on this side as opposed to in the center, is that then it's kind of its own scene in its own right. Which begs the question, what do I want to do in this open area? I think I actually have an answer to that. I think I want to put some kind of lumber shed. Or, oh, there we go. This is the Diamond River one, but there should be a generic version of that. Oh, cylindrical workshop. There we go. So this could be kind of a newer storage building, but again, keeping that low profile. And maybe we'll chain that off so that these, because maybe this one isn't rail served, but this one is. So we've got trucks coming in and out, going that way, something along those lines. I like how this building looks here, though. And it leads to the question of, do we want more buildings here or not? I'm going to say no, because I'm afraid that if we start going too building crazy, we're going to overwhelm the cement plant. Even though it's this big, tall tower in the backdrop, if we put buildings in the foreground, I think it might demand too much attention. So I'm probably going to leave that blank for the time being. Let's just get some basic ground textures in there, because we're not going to really be messing around with the height at all on this one. So we'll just put some gravel down as a starter, and then we'll do some mixing up so we have some different tones and colors and so forth. So we're just doing this warehouse bit, warehouse and cement plant for now. Shortly, we'll get into the following scene. But now the goal, we've got kind of basic placement down, and now we just want to see, hey, what does this look like when it's at least mostly scenic? Are we satisfied with it, or do we feel like it's still bare? And that's going to be a trick with something like this, where you don't have, I don't want to call them cheats, but you don't have easy kind of scenic elements like hills and forests and stuff like that that you can just kind of fill. It's a balance, I think, for an area like this, where you want it to be busy enough, but not too busy. I am feeling like this is probably a bit too empty. Maybe we'll experiment with like a small hill. I'm liking that. I am liking that as an idea, so, because it just, now, yes, it won't be this wide in real life, but I don't want it to be dull. And I think, especially because the track on this is 100% flat all the way through, it probably merits consideration as to how we might vary the landscape around it so that we're making the most of the space we have to work with and giving it a sense of depth and placement within a larger world. Because I'm seeing a hill here. Let's try that. And I think a hill is also a nice way of dividing these two scenes, because yes, as we discovered last week with my switching job, you're gonna end up coming in and out of this area to use the runaround to go back in. But I think there's still something to be said for this idea that you, that if you're in this scene, you're fully in it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with crossing scenes, shall we say, to go from one area to another, even if you're just switching. I don't think there's anything wrong. It's not like we're saying this is a whole other town. or something like that. Like, I think if you were switching and you went from one, your head end was in one town and your tail end was in another, then that starts to maybe stretch what you want to do. But I think for here it's okay, and it gives a little bit of a transition point, because I really wanted to make sure this transition flows nicely. And I want to be cautious about placing trees, but we could put some low shrubs, and I think that might look nice. Some bushes, things like that. Maybe a tree where it's not going to be in the way, so you can still reach that switch, because all of these switches are manuals. And we'll just add some bushes and get those below ground. Add some more shrubbies. Trick in Train Z is when the shrubs are designed to go on flat land, and here I am placing it on an edge. This is where we go to the splines and see if we've got some. I don't think we have any twists in here, but maybe we'll just do some regular twists here. Yeah, I could go with that. With this idea that it suggests that there's some growth and forestation, forests, whatever, and that you're kind of looking into this scene. Ah, yeah, that's what I'm going for, right? Like that. Now let's see what we've got. Ooh, yeah, that's kind of cool. And we'll bring that down a bit. I think this is cool without compromising the ability to reach for the switches. And this kind of provides a nice viewing window. It's a nice divide between Linglestown and this industrial park, so I am liking that. And then what we'll do is we'll just place a little bit more of this along here. I think I want to kind of keep the grass motif going right about to the edge, so it doesn't feel too much like it just arbitrarily stops. Virtual Railroader Academy, 2 days in a row. Loving what you're doing so far. Yes, 2 live streaming days in a row. Hope that if you haven't already checked out the Virtual Railroader Academy, you do so. Just click on the profile there in the chat if you're watching live. Or just a couple days ago, I released a trailer, so just search Virtual Railroader Academy on YouTube. You'll find it. We're using Railroads Online to teach actual railroading practices with my co-host, Casey J, who's the one who's typing in the chat. So yes, two live streams in a row. Which, so it's been 3 weeks since the last one. And just as a heads up, I think that these live streams are going to be a monthly thing. I was wanting to make them a weekly, but I think that's just too much to do. I'm already doing the weekly Virtual Railroader Academy, Railroads Play Railroads Online. I'm having fun doing that, so I think these are going to be monthly. So I encourage you to suggest what kinds of routes you'd like to see. I'll probably be putting out some polls pertaining to that. What makes this layout great, try to keep them monthly-ish, but again, I find myself very easily overcommitting on what I can do, and I don't want to make too many promises on the amount of content that I can deliver. But I'm going to try to keep each of those monthly. The live stream's definitely monthly. What makes this layout great, the edited episodes, trying for monthly. So I like that as a scene. I think what I would say is that it's nice. I mean, yes, you're not going to be standing in the layout looking at it like this, although you may occasionally take a photo with your phone like that. But it does, now it's got a nice flow into the cement plant, which makes me happy. I like that a lot. And then when you're looking at it too, and the way the trees partially cover over the cement plant, I'm liking how that appears. Now, what else do I want to do with this? Let's just add a haze bumper. I don't want to... I might come back to this, but I think we're going to move on because I want to make sure that we get through, again, base layers of everything. Because, yeah, I'm seeing where... I think the last thing I'm going to do is add a fence. I'll add just around here. Just give us a little bit of sense of what this is going for. Add a fence to give us sense. 6 pence. Though truth be told, this is a good time to mention, give a shout out to those of you who are supporting the Roundhouse on Patreon, and if you are, I really appreciate it. And when I say the Roundhouse, I mean you're supporting the Roundhouse podcast, you're supporting Great Train Layouts Live, what makes this layout great. If you want to see more content, go to patreon.com/theroundhouse, and for as little as $1 a month, you're supporting the show. You'll get a shout out in the next episode of what makes this layout great. Or actually, yeah, you get your name in the credits for what makes this layout great. You get a shout out in the Roundhouse podcast. At $5 a month, you're getting early access to episodes a week in advance for both what makes this layout great and the Roundhouse. $25 a month, you get a free print, photo print. So if you haven't already done so, I encourage you to check it out. We also have monetization here on YouTube, so if you want to drop it a super chat and just throw a couple bucks, I really appreciate it. Alco is resting. My cat is resting beneath the webcam, so maybe if somebody drops a super chat for a couple dollars or whatever, I'll make Alco have a cameo in a moment. Fence. Actually, I think we have some fence. Now, we do have some concrete fences, and I might play with that. But for starters, let's just see what we think about doing some good old wire fences. Especially around here, because I don't know if we need a fence here, given that that's kind of the side of the building already. We'll just start it from the edge of the building. And then... Nice thing with fencing is that this is something that you can really easily fit into a triangulated space. And we'll run it down along the track here. Now, yes, we'll need a gate at some point, but that's getting into super detailing that I want to avoid for the moment, so we're gonna just leave it as is. Now we're gonna split these splines so we can see how they look. And actually may just delete that bit right there. Yeah, I think that gives us something to work with. Again, we might come in here with some super detailing in a bit, but this at least gives us a start. And then we've got a warehouse in here. So you have a nice kind of scene to work with here, and you also have the cement plant at large. Cement plant, I'm going to add maybe a quick tree backdrop just to give some sense of depth. So let's hide the walls layer. I nearly had a heart attack thinking that I was building on the wrong backdrop, but no. Or on the wrong layer, because you guys have seen me do that before. And we'll add... Now this I do intend to add to the walls layer. I'm going to add this row of trees. And that way, that just gives a little bit of sense of depth. Sometimes we do the custom backdrop thing, which is what we did with the Commonwealth. But times like this, I think you get enough of a sense of scenery. This might be a little bit too green, but I like it as a placeholder. Again, there may be things I do in between what you're seeing tonight and the finished product. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now we get into the experimental bit, which I'm really excited about. This is something I've had in my mind for oh, about a month. Like basically, as soon as I saw this corner, I'm like, I know I want to do something with it. I thought about it a little hard and came up with this idea. We are going to keep in mind that idea I was talking about at the beginning of the show, which is that we want this layout to feel like it has history, and this railroad to feel like it has history. And this idea of urban decay. That, and we've got these two industries here, and what can we do to make them feel further apart when we're looking at them, even from back here? It's not the worst thing if they blend into one another, but I wanna have some time to experiment. And so what I'm gonna be trying to do with today, I'm gonna need to make sure those tracks don't sink down into the ground, is a concrete viaduct. We're gonna make this a bridge scene. So we're gonna have this creek cutting through here, thereabouts, and now getting it by this is going to be a little bit of an interesting challenge, but we'll figure that out in a moment. But I want a concrete viaduct. That way we have a chance to actually look up at the train, and there's a sense of, again, this landscape that the railroad fits around, even though the track is 100% flat. We're going to build up this hill, actually the hill's on either side, to provide that sense of that the track was built through here, but the creek was obviously here first. B&H Productions, hello. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to build that up on the other side as well. And I think if we look at the track plan, we have this full curve to work with. I don't think there's a fascia in place already. Well, I'd better switch out from walls, or I'm going to start laying things on the walls layer. But if we activate the base maps, this red line is the track. But I think if I go back to my reference photos, that corner's square. Yes, the corner's square. So we have basically up to about here. And maybe we'll put the wall in place just to remind us of where that hard limit is. So if we go to walls, we'll unlock that layer. We're going to stretch both the... no, not adding, moving. Not this one, but we'll get back to that in a moment. I'm going to move the sky backdrop to about here. And that might be a bit too far, but it's okay because we're going to close off that corner regardless. And we'll take the trees with it. Yeah. Again, this might be more rural than what you would choose to do, but the backdrops, there's not a huge selection. And in certain cases, I find myself doing custom backdrops for routes if I really need something that fits a specific space and I can't make the splines do what I want. But for this, I think that's going to fill our needs. So, and there's a couple ideas that I have in conjunction with this. I might actually go back to that mill, that was PBR. No, it wasn't a PBR. Oh, I know what it was. I have this vision in my mind of that even though we're kind of showing these trees, that really it's more like we're looking, like maybe the creek's been diverted over its history, and so there's actually kind of, we see the backs of older factories that aren't serviced by the railroad, or maybe they are, but that's off screen. So yeah, like this building here. which I'm gonna say put it about there. And we're just gonna kind of overlap these and do what we need to. I'm not quite sure how this is gonna look. I mean, yes, I put this hill here, but that is subject to change. I like this building, though. I think I'm gonna put the building here. Like right about here. See, this is where I don't find I need to do a custom backdrop, because I can just take these buildings and the larger building exists in the no man's land, so to speak. Stone, yeah, that's... I like that. Although I don't want it with the loading dock, because that's going to look weird. I want it with... yes, that's actually the exact building I was thinking of. This is what I want. This exact building. You know, you spend too much time in the Train Z route editor when it's like, I know exactly what that building looks like that I want. I just haven't found it yet. So something like this, maybe? Yeah. We'll probably put bushes or something underneath that to kind of make up for the land difference. I'm not quite sure what I want to do on that front yet. And I think we'll just repeat that building, because it's so cool, and... yeah. You see what I got, what I'm going for here? The guys, I think that there's this idea that we're going behind stuff, like that there's a whole other scene that we don't see beyond the backdrop, and what we're doing is just kind of sneaking behind that. Water. I'm gonna make this a spline for the time being. That seems like the easier thing to do for the time being, rather than making it an actual interactive river asset. I don't want it to be that bright or that rippled, because then that suggests that there's too much movement, and yet the water isn't moving at all. Nah, I'm thinking more like this. This one's maybe a bit more see-through than I like, but I'll work with that. Just to have something in place to get a sense. It does not need to be a thick creek. A thin creek is 100% acceptable in this case. And we're going with that because I can square that off nicely with where the fascia ends here. But it's just a little stream. Given the size of what's around it, I don't want it to be too wide. Doesn't need to be too wide. Just a nice little stream. And now let's... maybe a bit deeper, though. Let's see if we can take it a little bit further down. Little bit further down. Just to get it a bit centered. And yes, I know I've got tracks floating. We'll clean that up later. But I'm on a roll, and I want to play around with this concept. Truth is, you could have a building over the top of it, because... and we might experiment with that, where we'd put like a bridge or some suggestion, because so many times you'd have the building sitting on top of some sort of platform or something that would allow it to be suspended over a river partially, or an embankment. So that might be what we do here. So let's do that. Let us see about concrete. Oh, I know what I want to use for this. I think... I love these concrete walls. That said, it's... doesn't give the sense that it could go through. Although, if we did it as sort of pillars, if we pretended these were pillars, then actually I think that could work nicely. That could work okay. Something along those lines. I maybe move it a little bit down, just to get it more in level with what the ground is. We'll get that height so we know what height that is, and we can just set the other one to that exact same height. Now there's a little bit of a, at the very least, we've got a foundation to this building running about here. And now it's already starting to look a little less comical for being suspended in midair. I do want to find a sort of concrete platform. Let's see if I can find something like that without too much difficulty. Because I could kit bash something if I need to, but it's always nice when these things kind of work. I like the colors of that. But, that's pretty much the same thing as what we already have there. That's more of a road bridge. But if we don't see the road, let's have a look at what that actually looks like. Delete that. And this applies to model railroading as well, where you can take a bridge, or this is kind of scratch building essentially. Actually, I think I might like this even more than that other one. If we build like this, and we build a couple of... it thinks I'm trying to click on the fascia or something else. Yeah, and then we get the height of this here. Not the material, but the height. I don't think that's what I was looking for height-wise. Is that? Nope, that is definitely not the height I was looking for. That's the height I'm looking for. Okay. And we'll leave that for the time being. But something like this, just to give a little sense of depth. And I clearly have another spline point in the... Yep, that's what I wanted to adjust. There we are. That's closer. I think that's just a little bit too low on the line height. Oops. And I clicked the river, so I got that to raise up instead. There we are. Yeah, like that. And obviously, you could kind of nitpick the way it actually blends with the surrounding scenery, but we're going with this just to have something in place. Nick, you need a tunnel portal as if the building was built over a waterway. Yeah, that's kind of what I've gone with. I mean, this is a bridge, but similar idea. We're going to lower this down a bit because obviously the river is way too high up in comparison to the building. I think we'll have to raise the building up again too, but we will figure that out in a moment. Gravity-defying water we have here. And this is what? Okay, that is negative 0.403, so we can just take that and apply that height to the different spline points relative to the bridge. Why am I still not seeing the spline point for the bridge? Difficult with these buildings in the way. I do wish that there was an easy way to be able to see through buildings. There's no good shortcut for that in this simulator. Yeah, it's one of those things you have to learn to work with and navigate around. Or maybe it's underneath that one. Because I see the bridge and I see the concrete wall. Oh, there, I think that's the... Come on. Here, right, and I don't have the splines on. There we are. And now we could set that to the same height of negative 4.03, which is very specific. And now we can move our buildings back into place and make sure that they are at the right elevation over the creek. Spectacle. Think of doing a trains railroad at some point if I got a computer that could handle it. Do the same with a model railroad. Yeah, you definitely need to make sure you have at least a decent computer to get the most out of trains scenically, although if you were using it for model railroading purposes and you didn't need the play factor. The play factor to me is a big key, because that's why we do pre-visualization here. But if you didn't need that, if you were really just trying to play with the scenery, then I could see going that route. I'm glad that you like the Creek CH2112. that's, I was hoping that could be a nice surprise element of things, because it's just that this is a really good transition point. This is a transition point between two scenes. Why not make the most of it and go, especially because, as I said earlier, there are not a lot of transition points. This layout is all about these concentrated elements of scenes with the staging yard, Linglestown, the cement plant. It's all very packed. And that's not a bad thing, but I do think there's something to be said for just little bits of breathing room. I look forward to coming over and seeing the real thing, and I'll be hopefully you're finding these to be good ideas, and then I'll be really flattered to see them realized. So we need a concrete viaduct. So we're gonna look concrete or stone. Truth be told, actually, when I say concrete, I'd probably more along the lines of stone. This is nice bridge girder side material. Not exactly what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. And my thinking with this, so the viaduct, one track, we're going to make this a two. So here's another element to this railroad's fictional history that I'm inventing on, is that this used to be a two-track connection. Maybe we're simulating the idea that there was a second branch that went off elsewhere, or just more traffic. But for whatever reason, there used to be two tracks, and now there is one. And we're going to replicate that here with this viaduct. We need to get it set to the right height for the tracks. Right about there. We'll grab that height and then apply that to the other pieces of the viaduct, at least initially, and then we'll adjust that as need be. So, there we have it. This gives the feeling that this railroad goes way back to, say, the 1880s or 1890s, just by what type of bridge you select. And it's so easy. It's a visual method of storytelling, because obviously you can write your railroad's fictional history, but it's one thing to read it, or for somebody to read it, or for you to tell the story. It's another when you can show, don't tell. That's what we often say in filmmaking, and I think the same applies for layout, construction philosophy. The more, or scenery and design, the more that the atmosphere can be illustrated by the types of materials you're using, I think the better off for it. I do want this creep to be a little bit lower. We're gonna sink it a bit lower than 4.3, because that's about the height that I was picturing it at here, this 5.45. And we'll probably need to adjust that a little bit here with the ground. That's okay. And then, nope, definitely not adjusting that for that height. Back to adjusting the river. Yeah, that seems about right. And then we'll manipulate the terrain to make sure that we haven't completely dried up the creek. But this was the big thing that I was excited about. And maybe some of that is because I do confess, I like my scenery. I like my greenery. Like this is a really good layout for what it is. It's a good design. It would not be my style, but honestly, that's not in any way a knock against Rudy and Carolyn or what they've designed, because clearly this is what they want, and I think that there's a lot of fun to be had with it. I certainly look forward to seeing it and running trains on it in real life. But that's why we do this show, and what makes this layout great is because everybody's going to have their own preferences with regards to what they run. So the one chance I'm getting to put a little in the nice bridge and greenery is the one chance where I'm like, this is the super exciting part for me. But not to take away from anything else that we've done. Certainly, we don't take away from moo-moos. Moo-moos will always be special. We'll always have moo-moos as opposed to pairs. Friends of the Frankfurt and Cincinnati. Lol. Well, I wish I knew what was lol worth, but I'm glad something was funny. I'm liking this. I will say I wish... I want this to be a little bit taller. No, not the river. I kind of want this to be taller. Like, I want this to see... Because this is the lowest you're going to be able to view this scene at. And I do want this sense of looking up. Like, if you're eye level, you could get maybe you could get a camera down into this river and you're looking up, but I do want to get this sense of something towering. I'm just gonna try leaving this building at ground level and just placing a second one. And yeah, it's gonna look weird because it's gonna have loading doors floating in midair, but we're gonna ignore the loading doors because they're not there. And they're not there because I said they're not there. I like that logic. I think that logic holds. Those are not loading doors. They're front row viewing doors. I don't know. Roll with it. But you see now that it's a bit taller, there's this sense of that we have something to look up to. If we're going to be eye level with the train at the creek, now we can look up at something. And I like that from a scenic perspective. So yes, you can criticize the loading doors, but we're going with it for now. Water break. Spectacle, as far as your ferry boat, river boat company that went railroad, I think that's great. If your layout has some, like, former canals or former towpaths, I think you could have a lot of fun with that. Okay, let's get some ground texture in here. Let's get some trees. I think that's going to pretty much do it, at least as far as the broad strokes are concerned. Of course, later off screen, I might go back and touch this up a bit, but this gives us something to work off of, at least initially. I'm going to make this all green because I really want to make this as expansive as possible, since there's plenty of room to have the brown industrial stuff. Actually, I just had an idea with that. I just had an idea for what I want to do here, but we're going to come back to that thought in a minute. But for here, let's get this nice and treed in and really create that sense of visual separation. For those of you watching along live, feel free to join the chat. Maybe share a bit more of what you're modeling or what you've been up to the last month. Hopefully you're enjoying, you're in the northern hemisphere, you're enjoying the slow, very slow emergence of spring and warm weather. I know here in Virginia I keep getting my hopes up only to find that we had snow a few days ago, which was kind of unreal. So hopefully it's warming up wherever you're at. Man, can't come soon enough in my book. Okay, and now let's. Oh yeah, it's got the loading docks, but we're gonna actually I like this a lot. We're gonna pretend that those aren't there. And this is where we can have a lot of fun as far as pretending that there's former road beds, so you can have ballast, weeds. I don't think you'd have ties. I mean, maybe you would have ties. Let's see if we can find some ties that can JR Railroad ties. This is more straight. Those are new ties, cross ties, a lot of tie stacks. Maybe let's just search tie single, so we can see about single ties rather than these groups. Lane tie? No, it's still... I mean, it's nice and haphazard. but it's a bit too straight. There we go. This isn't great, but we'll work with it just for the sake of being able to have something in place. It gives you the idea, which is that you have these buried ties. We're going to have weeds growing over this. It's illustrating the concept, which is there used to be a second line here. There isn't, and because this is kind of, a place that's sort of forgotten and not frequently traveled, like we can afford to really play up the abandonment factor for that. Like Conrail, certainly Conrail in 1979 has better things to do than worry about what this corner looks like. But we are going to worry about what this corner looks like, but only in the best ways possible. Let's borrow some of these shrubs and trees. I want it to look really kind of weedy. And honestly, maybe even this factory here, maybe this is abandoned. Maybe this is closed down. Because you're starting to get into that area of industries moving overseas and therefore a lot less industry produced here. That sort of growing urban decay. Yeah, I'm liking this. I could see this one being an abandoned factory of some kind too. And that's the beauty of choosing different eras, is that it's very easy to kind of default to something like, for me, I would default to the transition era because yay steam and my F units and it's not, and everything has that kind of newness to it, or still relatively fresh. But there is something to be said for this idea of that the world's, that there's growth. And I think, I think about growing up as a kid in the 90s and seeing Conrail and seeing industrial spurs where things were overgrown and the like. And there's a sense of nostalgia for that for me, because that's when I grew up. Superbird, no layout work for me this week. Fresh root canal. Ugh. Man, what is it with you guys and having teeth work? First it was White Star a few weeks back with what was it? Some dental work, and now root canal. You guys make sure you're brushing. I know some things aren't brushing teeth, but make sure you're brushing your teeth. A public service announcement from the guy showing you how to build a scenic train layouts. Seriously, hope you're doing better. Yeah, I'm glad that you get to. Glad you're enjoying things here tonight with us. You're in good company. So yeah, I'm liking how this looks as kind of abandoned industry type of deal. We'll put some red maples here. We've got a seam here, so we'll hide that with a tree. Honestly, that's kind of a good place for it anyway, because look at how that turns it into a transition point. We'll put a smaller red maple here. And just by the way of having a few trees, we've already now made it so that this is there's this nice sense of separation between the two scenes. So now when you're looking down, this feels contained. Just by adding those few trees, now this is a self-contained scene, this concrete plant. And we're going to do the same, or the same idea with what we have going on this side, where if you're looking at King of Grain, you're not, you're going to see the river somewhat, but if you're not, they won't blend too much together. I think that separation is kind of a fun thing to have. And yeah, something like that. And then get some more of those Sosna trees. I love those Sosna trees. It's not my Quist bushes, it's my Sosna trees. That seems like a t-shirtable thing. The Quist bushes or the Sosna trees. Only understood by people who actually speak, again, whatever language it is that Quist and Sosna are from. But, and even then they'll be like, why is he talking about bushes and trees? The fun. We're going to move that tree a little bit to the side, so that we can see. Yeah, I mean, this just, it has that viewing window, that sort of feeling that you think about rail fanning. If you were to rail fan this line in real life, let's say it existed in real life, and let's say you were rail fanning it, like this is the kind of part where you'd have to climb, do some climbing and digging to get to actually see the scene itself. So I think if you give your audience, man, now I'm my filmmaking brain, but your layout visitors, you give them a sense that they're looking into something, that sense of adventure. And there's so many rooms for Easter eggs, so much room for Easter eggs here, so many Easter eggs you could put, a person fishing, old tires. Let's see if we've got some old tires. I feel like that's some... I don't have any old tires? How about tire? Okay. There's a random tractor tire that's standing up perfectly straight. Can I... Oh, yeah, I can roll that. Perfect. Okay. So we've got a tractor tire. Maybe a couple of tractor tires. And we haven't finished texturing the river either. But stuff like that, I mean... it makes me cry because it's like, oh, I make this pretty scene and then I'm going to pollute it. I don't know if I can bring myself to do that, but I'll try to be strong and leave it at least a little polluted, because this just does feel like the kind of thing that would have some scuzziness, but it doesn't have to. If you want to play it like, yes, it's decayed, but it's not completely falling apart, I think you could get away with that. I mean, it's so cliche to say it's your railroad and do what you want, but there's truth to it. You don't have to make it any brighter or more alive than you'd like for it to be. That feels too bright as a whole, but I like it as a texture. It feels more like what I should have in a logging area, like what we did with Kootenai. We'll go with that as a base, and then maybe I'll scale back and mix that up with others, because I actually do like that. It's maybe just a bit too strong. But I appreciate you guys tuning in as you do these Thursdays when we do these streams. And if you're new here, well then, thank you for joining us here on Great Train Layouts Live, where we're using Train Z Railroad Simulator to look at how to design different layouts. As I mentioned earlier, this project was commissioned by Rudy and Carolyn, and if you have a layout that you want to build, maybe there's a track plan that you've seen in a publication, or you've designed your own and you're struggling around, what is it going to look like? I want to see it before I build it. Or alternatively, you want to play with it. You want to get a sense of, I have these operations in mind, but I want to know that it's actually going to work and flow like I imagine. Feel free to contact me. Best place is theroundhousepodcast.com/contact, or my email is Nick Ozorak, Ozorak, at theroundhousepodcast.com. But basically, just go to the Roundhouse Podcast, use the contact us form. I know I keep saying this, there will be a Great Train Layouts website. I'm working on that. It's just not done yet. But you can reach out to me, and I'd be happy to work with you on a commission basis to help you realize your layout. We could get into super detailing. I could do just basic track work. Whatever fits your budget and your needs, more than happy to help you out. So, Nick Ozorak, and again, just go to theroundhousepodcast.com, and there's a link, my email address and things like that are there. Would be happy to help you realize your layout. And I could do it behind the scenes, or I could do it here as a live stream, and then we could kind of explore it together. Trees are really helping to separate the scene. Well, that's the goal. And even when you look at it from a distance, it just gives this distinction to this corner, that this is something separate from anything else anywhere else. Now, what about this? What about this? Well, I've got a thought about this, actually. So we've got King Grain here. And King Grain is pretty tall, pretty big, and is something that really blocks from view what we have back here. It certainly blocks the idea of this curve, especially with the trees. Now, we could just expand the trees. We could just bring them up to the switch. But while I was looking down at this angle, I had another idea. And this is something... we see it a little bit over here, too. But I just want to play it up even more. And that is the classic narrow going between the buildings kind of scene. Because while we do have... we are touching buildings here, there aren't buildings in the foreground. And the reason being, we got to make sure those switches can be reached. Now, yeah, we could have maybe some low-profile buildings, but it's still a different kind of view here. So I want to experiment with trying to put some buildings around this edge that give a sense of... well, that's a nice building. For as far as urban decay is concerned, that's actually kind of nice. I want to experiment with this idea of, can we make it feel like the track is squeezed into this real narrow space? And you don't have to worry about the transition out of it, because if the building's blocking the view here, the track curves, and then when you're looking at it over here, it's in this really green, treed up area. So this king grain could serve as a really good divider, because you're never going to be able to see the scene in a way that betrays the illusion. BD, I like this building. I mean, it's a bit flat, but I like what it is. In fact, I like it maybe even more than that. Yeah. Yeah, there's something nice about that. I'm liking that as an aesthetic. Now, the trick is going to be to find something that's thin that we can fit into this nook here. But I'm thinking back to this structure, the small warehouse B, and let's see what other similar buildings we might have. That looks a little too different from what we've got. Small warehouse B. I mean, it's not a bad building, but it needs to be taller. I mean, I could stack a bunch of these and get that illusion, but I don't think it's gonna... But you can see from here what we're going for, this idea of squeezing through the buildings, which we could do because we're still leaving access to the switch. Rudy, next step, hiring Nick to come to my house and just build this IRL. Well, I can be persuaded. I don't rule out possibilities. Let me search factory again and see if we can find something that's nice and tight and really fits how... Nope, that's not nice and tight. I mean, it's not that big. I actually used that building on a different layout, but... oh, man, like, this has the right kind of look and feel. I might even use it for over here, honestly. I like the atmosphere of that building. But it's maybe a bit too tall? I don't know. I mean, it definitely has that sense of decay to it, which I like. I mean, even if I did something like this, yeah, we'll leave that off to the side as a food for thought building. It's like if you went to your local train store and said, I want to buy all your layout kits. Or not layout kits, but I want to buy all of your different building kits. That's the one. I want to buy all of your building kits. And they say, okay, which ones you want to buy? And you say, yes. That's kind of what we're doing here, is that feeling of, hey, we could just get all the kits. And we could just play with them. We could clone them. We could see how we like how they all fit. Now, these are going to be floating in midair, which I'm not crazy about, but I'll figure out what to do with that later. Okay, so the bottom rotation is 210.5. We'll match this at 210.5. Let me see if I like that, because I think I like that. I mean, yes, I do. So, what's nice about this scene is that nothing's going to betray this view, depending on which types of buildings you use. And then you can't really see that building from the other side. Nobody's ever going to look at... Well, no, that's not... No, that is true. This is all... This is wall. So nobody's going to look at the layout from this angle or this angle. So all we're seeing is just this little narrow passageway that the train's appearing through. And there's something to be said for that fact that you're not going to be able to follow the train 100% with your eyes. There's that visual break. I see the conversation has switched to cats. What do you guys think of a narrow gauge route with a standard gauge interchange? So many examples of that, White Star. You can't go wrong with that as a piece of your design premise. You could definitely find things to do on that front. Now, what to do for this very backdrop here? Well, I kind of like this building's edge. So what happens if we do this and we place it like so? Just enough because I like how it looks from this angle. And you don't really see that much of it. You kind of see it through the trees, but not totally. I like that. I think I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to add another couple of trees here to really make that thick and to make that just that bit harder to see from this viewpoint, because this isn't supposed to be a major focus. This is just in the backdrop, and you're looking at it when you see the trees here. In fact, let's just create the other wall so that we know what our boundary is. Oh no. I did it, guys. I told you I would do it. That whole scene is on the wrong layer. Oh, goodness. Well, we're not going to worry about that for now. We are going to move on, and then I'll reassign them to the correct layer later. John, you'd be interested in another transition era layout. Definitely more of those coming. There's, yeah, I have one on my list that I want to do that's transition era. Something of a British philosophy, but an American design. I'm excited about that one. Not quite clear where the wall is, but we're going to... well, we'll use that as our reference point. So there's our reference point for the wall. And we're going to apply the wall texture here. I guess we'll make this visible. Wall texture. We'll get the wall spline. And then, yes, it has to go in that direction. So we'll drag it over to here. And then we're going to drag this end over to roughly what's square. Trying to keep the grid lines. We'll turn off the... lock that. Well, no, we don't want to lock that. We will unlock that, but we will hide the base maps. And then we can see where our wall is supposed to line up on the grid. It is supposed to line up a little bit before that line. So, yes, it's moving over a bit too much. Should be probably about here. Which means, okay, yep, that looks about right. Which means actually our warehouse is hiding. So we'll need to bring it to the foreground a wee bit. Did the abandoned track to go straight through one of those buildings? I would say the abandoned track, I mean, you could have it as like, maybe it was an access point for a lead that went into one of those buildings. That could be one way to interpret it. I don't really have an answer for that in the context of what this is. I just know that I like having this idea that there used to be more than what we see. Because, and again, when you're looking at it in the scene, you can't really see where it came from or where it goes to. You see it a little bit on this end, but that's subject to interpretation. But over here, now when we're looking at this scene involving the peeking through the buildings, which will look go about right here, and then we'll rotate this like so. Now that is a complete scene in of itself. That is, you get this nice picture view with the track, with where the train comes in, and you are just staring right down it. Nice way of narrowing the view. So, I think that kind of is the base impression of things. I mean, maybe we'll place some small cushed bushes just to round this off a few. But this is pretty much, what we're going for right here. Yeah, just a couple of small bushes. We'll put some near the tires. And what else do we have? I mean, you could put that as kind of like moss growing up the side of the viaduct, which also viaduct, whatever you want to call it. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, some thicker bushes maybe along here. Just a bit. I see. Man, I always think this is like, I always look at this and think, oh, surely this is going to take that long. And then I look at the time, I'm like, oh, wow, we really spent that much time doing that thing. Okay. Yeah, that looks too mirror on this side. We're going to delete that one and go with a different cushed shape there. Oh, interesting. That one appears to be seasonal. Good to know. I'm always looking for seasonal assets in this game because most of them aren't. But to find the rare few that are is kind of a nice surprise. Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, I think that gives enough of an impression. I want to move on to just this. I think given what we're looking at time-wise today before playtime, I'm probably not going to get into much, but we'll at least get rid of the grid so that it can look nice. We'll get that much done. And looking at this here, I have to remind myself of what industries we have. So I'm going to pull up the layout track plan on a different window. Okay, so we have the grain silos over here. This is the brewery, which is both this track where the train actually goes into the track goes into the building here. And I had a building that replicated that, and then took that out for one reason or another. Because I do have a couple with that sort of feature. This over here is a scrapyard. That's going to be a lot of super detailing. So we'll just kind of get the base elements in place, like a shed and that type of thing. This is just a general background. This isn't a rail-served industry. Then here we've got a paper mill. We do have a food warehouse over here, which makes me think of that warehouse that I was talking about earlier where I said, oh, this is a nice building, but it's not right for here. I think we're going to put it over here. I mean, this is a nice building too, but not what we're going to do here. Old warehouse, maybe? Ooh. This is a smaller one. That might be what I end up using here instead of the brick building. This is much more compact. Yeah, I like this better. I mean, it's still maybe a bit taller than what I'd like, although we could just take it down. This is our form of kit bashing. Yeah, that looks a lot better for the scene. Sorry, not sorry. Because then it's just dominating less, and it's a bit more true to what room actually exists in real life on this layout. Make it a 3.4. And then we'll bring these two together. Now, obviously, we'll need platforms and stuff, but for the time being, it will do. Okay, so yeah, I love when that happens. I mean, it's convenient when I'm digging and then I go back to something and realize, hey, that would actually fit perfectly for this. Not that one. Ooh, well, there's our angled building right there. It makes me think of those rest stops here in the US. Like, it actually fits the space really well, but it looks like those travel travel plazas that you encounter on the interstate. So I don't think that's going to be right. And the guy who built this, that's for a French route, so I can understand why it has that funky shape. Railroad guy just finished running a stationary live steam boiler. Cool. Well, I've got digital stationary live steam boilers. Not that one. How was that? Now it's like, okay, now that I know the thing that I want, I'm probably not going to be able to find the thing that I want. This is a nice building, but it's a little too similar to the one that I've already used here, which is the food warehouse. No, the paper mill. So we've got the paper mill here, which arguably that paper mill should probably be more of a square building like this one. But that to me doesn't say paper mill. This actually says more paper mill. Maybe this. Because if we do this as the paper mill, I mean, those windows just feel way too big for paper mill. Then again, maybe I'm wrong. I like that as an aesthetic. Okay. So, can I get away with making that the... But, if I do that as the paper mill, I could make this the food warehouse. Because nobody says that it can't be a sort of older building for the freight warehouse, and maybe that gives a sense of variety to the different industries. But I think he has buildings looked at for this anyway, so he kind of already knows what he wants here. This is more me just trying to figure out what's going to fit the aesthetic of the layout, what we're going for as a look, so that those of you who are just playing this to play it or to explore it, you just get a sense. This is also kind of a decent building as a food warehouse. I mean, it looks similar to the other ones earlier, the ones that we used. But that does have the right look about it for this kind of area. But I feel like we had the brick industries over here, so it's kind of nice to make these more of the stone and concrete and so forth. Yeah, I like that. Okay, that's final answer, so to speak. And I think we'll move this. Now, this is going to be also interesting because we do have something of a transition scene between these two, but at the same time, we do and we don't. Because on the one hand, there is this little gap, and we could do our tree thing there as well. Oh. Or, here's what I'm going to do for this. That's going to divide it up, but not go with the tree route of things. I don't know what I want this wall for, but I want it for something, so I'm going to save it here, because that looks cool for some purpose. Actually, I think I'm going to use it over here as a part of the backdrop. Just have a little bit of variety from the scenic elements. Yeah, just looks cool. Okay, now we're going with we're going with yarn. And specifically with yarn, we are going with maybe this one? Yeah, let's do that. There we go. I like that. I wasn't actually thinking of this one, but now that I see it, I think, yes, we'll definitely go with this. Highway bridge. Because you would totally have some type of highway or interstate going over this piece of railroad. And this is a nice way of dividing the two scenes while still feeling very much like we are in the industrial park. So now you can look down, you can see the other buildings, but there's a bit more distance created. I think it just adds more variety. I'll be honest with you guys, I'd actually envisioned that we were going to place that building I thought we were going to place, or not the building, I thought we were going to put the concrete bridge here. I had that as an idea in the past couple of days, but I think that could get a bit crowded. You could build a concrete bridge that would go across the scene like this, but I like it here. So that's what we're going with. Just a very simple way to divide those two scenes up. Now I know I think it's JR Industrial, if I remember correctly. Because I would like to have something with a bit of a train shed that overhangs the track there. Even if we have to kit bash, although I don't think we'll need to. Ooh, this is going to be perfect. We're going to use this generic shop for the scrapyard. So that'll go here. Because now we have something that feels very plain, as these places are. The scrapyard... Oh, I like this as a building, but I don't think it can really fit what I've got going here. There's a scrapyard near where I used to live, and they had Wheeling and Lake Erie hopper sides turned into a fence. That was so cool. I-78? Yeah, this could be I-78. You like the death crate? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm going for too, John, is that sense of... that's a way of separating these, because it still very much feels like the same scene, but now there's just a little bit more sense of distance, and the more you can give that illusion of travel, the better off you are for it. I'm gonna try this. I don't know if I love it yet, but it could work. It's a little... It's not quite right. But... And it certainly kind of has... Oh, that's interesting. Oh, right, because that's the other side of the shed. Okay. So it's not going to quite look right with how the windows are set. But at least it gives us something to roll into. No, it's bugging me. Oh, paper product. Well, I guess that's our paper mill. Because why not? And I mean, it's big and long. A bit too long, but is that a problem? For the sake of where the bridge is, yeah, but I can move that bridge down a bit further. Let's see about the other side. Maybe that'll work a little bit better. Oh, well... Kinda does and kinda doesn't. I mean, what we could do... I'm gonna move that out of the way. We go with that as our building. I could just build another wall here, and that takes care of that. And that might be what I do. Let me give that a quick try, and if I like it, I will keep it, and if not, we will move on. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna look odd viewing it from that direction. I have to check the track plan. I don't think there's any room beyond that wall. And that's... Okay, that's what the grain looks like. That's what that looks like. Nope, that is very much a wall there. So, I don't know. I kind of like it. And since it is actually a paper mill, there's that. And it's to its advantage. Doesn't have the right look about it. Let me just do one more move and replace, just to see if I... Now that I've got the wall there. I mean, I do like the size of this. But do I still like this better? Plus the fact that... Well, I mean, it's going to look odd no matter what if you view it that way, truth be told. Like, you're still going to see the sides and whatnot. I don't know if there's really any perfect solution to how that looks. Some of the shortcomings when you're trying to kit bash buildings and get them to fit just right. Sometimes you're not left with any really great answers. I mean, this is it's such a long building. Some of what I think of too is like, am I going to use this building for a future project? Because this one I might. This long one I might. I'm going to save that just because I'm really happy with how this fits in the context of the scene. I might change that later. We'll see. But I'm happy with that as a scene. And now we're really starting to get a sense of what the thing is going to actually look like when it's all said and done. Let's get that attached to the wall later. Without actually switching to the wall layer, because knowing me, then I'll make a whole other scene in which I can't go where I'm making actual 3D elements and they're going off, going on the wrong layer. And it's not the end of the world, because obviously you can play it and just see it as is, but there is something to be said for being able to try different ideas, and then you can apply different layers accordingly. Let's play around a little bit more with this. Ooh, I like that building. And I think I like this building more, because it looks a little bit more like what would Rudy and Carolyn have on their actual layout. We'll just scroll through these quickly and see if I like anything better. This is the one I was thinking of here. It's got this little piece where, that's why I didn't go with it. It's got this little piece where the track goes underneath, which I like. Doesn't quite fit, though. I mean, I could make that siding a little bit longer, because it's not really going to change how it runs. Yeah, we'll do that, just because at least then it fits. So we're going to extend that siding, because it isn't going to change. It's different from what they do, but again, they have their buildings looked out. They know what they want. This is just for the sake of making sure it makes sense in the context of the layout. That is our brewery, and that actually looks really good. And honestly, this as a whole, I like. Here's me struggling to get away from the trees again, but I don't know. I think just a little bit of green, nothing major, but just a little bit, and then it's that sense of, I don't know, maybe it's too perfect if we've got one tree on each side. That could be a little bit too clean. But especially over here, I think it makes this nice and contained. Over here, maybe there's less of a need to make it contained. I mean, it's a very wide scene in general, so it's a harder one to contain. I'm liking this, though. Actually, that JR paper mill, I'm wondering if I want to make that a background building. So we've got all these unused buildings here that we've got at our disposal, and I'm just kind of thinking in terms of, hey, where could we put stuff so that it just looks a little bit more built up? Because obviously, if you were doing this, you can make your own kit bashes. You could do your own backdrops. That is something that I'm looking into as well. That I'll give you a heads up about. Is that I am looking to be able to offer backdrops, because as I'm learning how to make these ones that I'm creating for the simulator, these are things that could work for an actual model railroad, because they're high pixel. So they could work as prints, and I have a company that the company that I work with for the photo prints that I offer for patrons, patreon.com/theroundhouse, has the ability to do larger prints. So if that's something that would be of interest to you, do let me know, because if you've got backdrop request needs as far as photo editing and prints, that's something that I'm looking into. There we go. Yeah, just a little bit of a sense of, we've got these kind of building flats, these fake building flats, and it just adds that nice flavor of industry and texture without having to go to the whole work of making a full backdrop here, which we could do, but I think this kind of gives enough of the impression. You get the sense that this is an industrial park. It looks suitably industrial park-ish. Let's just get one more building in there just to plug that one gap here. Not an essential thing, but just a little something I want to do. Yeah, there we go. Now that's looking really nice and packed. And given that we've got 15 minutes, I think what we're going to focus on at this point is just getting some ground textures down, maybe a little bit of clutter, and that scrapyard in place. Water break. I've already gone through 2/3 of the bottle, which is perfect because we've gone through about 2/3 of tonight's stream. And I actually might start this playthrough a bit earlier. I'm really going to try to end at 9 or before, because as I found out last week, these switching scenarios are difficult to say the least. Let's see. I'm thinking the city dirt texture for this, maybe? City dirt. Oh yeah, okay, that's a good base, so we're just going to do a lot of this. As a starter, and then we're going to add... Because I don't need the grid for this. I feel fairly confident that this is just going to be... this is just going to be a matter of flat scenery here. Industrial parks are so heavily developed. This gap is bothering me. I want to do something with it. Let me have a look at the reference shots. So the reference... well, I don't think the way I've laid it out and the way it exists in the real world, there's not quite the gap. And that just comes from what it looked like when I was adapting the track plan. Because you see how far spaced out they are, but actually there's a much smaller gap. So I'm probably just going to fence that in and not really pay too much mind to it. Let's get a haze bumper on that track line, or actually all the sidings while I'm thinking of it, because that's an operational thing. Because we all know from having watched my operating sessions before that bumpers come in handy at the end of track. And I've never derailed a train at the end of a track. Right, guys? You can back me up on that in the chat. Yeah, okay, now let's get a little bit of brown, so we'll use some of this. I like using the gray as a base just to give it something a bit different from the previous scenes. We'll use this as our ballast coming through here, and maybe in a couple of other spots, but we'll line the ballast with it. You see how it does these weird clipping things. I almost want to make it street running, like pave over this alley. Yeah, we'll do that in a bit. And we're just building this up and getting all that as a quick alignment, and then we'll scatter some other textures over this to give it some variety. Hope that you guys are enjoying tonight's stream and in general what we're doing here on the Nick Ozrak YouTube channel. I named it for me simply because between doing this and the Roundhouse, I felt like, well, I appear to be the common denominator. So it would just be weird to have this be unlike Facebook, where that's really specific. You know, I have one Facebook for the podcast and one for the train layout design. With YouTube, it just makes much more sense to be able to say it all comes back to me. But obviously all of this is possible because of you guys, and I really appreciate you tuning in and offering your feedback and where you want to see the content go, because both with with what I'm doing with shows like this, as well as the podcast. Podcast, as you know, our slogan is "You name it, and we'll discuss it." And I'm always curious to see what ideas for show topics you come up with, and where you want to see that grow. It's so much fun to do this as part of a community thing, because railroading is teamwork, and even model railroading could be teamwork. It could be something we enjoy on our own, and that's absolutely fine too. But there is something to be said for being able to share the experience with you guys and have you along for the ride. Not in the last 4 minutes. No, you haven't put a train through a bumper. See? Reliability. And what happened to your reviews of the routes? I really enjoyed them. I've addressed this in past streams. I don't rule out the possibility there may be more, but I needed a new way of pushing myself creatively. I kind of felt like I hit something of a plateau without the rail yard. So it isn't to say that it'll never come back. It very well might, but I don't want to make any guarantees or commitments as to when that might be. Right now, I'm enjoying making this, and hope that you enjoy watching it. And I hope, especially with what makes this layout great, the edited episodes, that you find those enjoyable, and find them to have kind of elements of At the Rail Yard. Just trying to give as much variety to the ground textures as we can, because there's so many. This is so flat, like it really needs to look as interesting and involved as possible. So we're just kind of painting over it with a variety of colors and textures, and now we'll add purple or another shade of gray. And how many shades of gray can we get up to here? Maybe 6 or 7. I don't think we'll get much higher than that. So, getting more of the feel that we want. Now this is going to be dirt. I think we're going to add some dirt for the, if I could spell dirt, for the scrapyard. Not soil forest, more like soil forest. Yeah, there we go. That's a good one for here, and we'll maybe mix a couple others. And it can obviously be mixed with, I wonder if we have a scrap texture, which might help things too. PBR ground rubbles. Yep, there we are. That adds a little bit of that flavor of things too. Some scrap piles. Not skyscrapers. I mean, that's a nice building. Someday we'll do something with skyscrapers. I really want to do a northeast corridor kind of layout. I've got a plan in mind for an NEC layout. Well, actually, the one I have in mind doesn't have that many skyscrapers. I'm going to build up the piles of that along the edge here. And we've got the junkyard car, which actually looks really appropriate for the era. We might lower this a little bit scenically, because that way we've got a little bit of variation in the elevation around here, so it's not all 100% flat with no form. And again, nice to give it make it lower, since we have more areas where it's higher. So I think that looks pretty good. We'll sink this into the ground because we don't want the sidewalk. And let's add our handy dandy fence. And we'll just block that off as a sort of... Now this track is serving this, so the fence will actually extend to the outside, and we would have a gate for it too. And we'll see if I can find an open gate with relative ease. Or not. Yeah, we'll keep that square to that edge. And hopefully I got that angle just about right for when we split the... Yep, that looks about, maybe a little off. There we are. We'll get this one correct. Get this to match up. Re-split it. And there we go. That's nice. Alrighty. So, gonna need to pause, but we will be right back here on Great Train Layouts Live. And welcome back to Great Train Layouts Live, where we are here on the P&L Secondary, a fictional Conrail branch line, and given that it is 9 o'clock, we are going to just take an overview of what we've done today. We've got the concrete plant here, with a new warehouse structure in place, and the wonderful new derelict industry river divider scene. The street running. Let's just throw a street in there because that's going to take all of 2 seconds. Yarn 0 or 0. because that was the one. Oh no, it's S0, isn't it? Well, that kind of has its own unique look to it. We'll look at that. Oh, this is one. Yep, here we are. We're gonna place the road up to here and over to here. And then we'll adjust the heights a little bit so that it blends with the surrounding landscape. Just a little bit. Yeah. That's the challenge of using PBR textures. Getting things to line up perfectly is sometimes easier said than done. If we change it, there we go. Okay, there we go. Nice little itty bitty bit of street running, alleyway running. Not sure if it makes 100% sense, but I think it's just a nice little treat. Okay, so we've got that. We've got the brewery, the scrapyard, and the paper mill with the food warehouse and this nice divider. There's going to be some more super detailing in between streams, but we set out to make sure everything was scenic, and we've done that. And I'm really happy with what we've come up with as a result. And hopefully you think it's pretty cool too. But I think it just, it looks like it has, there's so much to it. You've got, a lot of gritty industry. You've got sort of the more commercial downtown sector. You have out in the fields on the other side of this divider, and you've got this sort of little woods cut here that I think just does so much when it comes to separating these two scenes. We've got these three big chunks. Each of these chunks is kind of its own thing operationally as well. And it's good to be able to give them each that own immersive feel, especially because this is a switching layout, and so there's so much time spent in each of these sections. Making sure that they are immersive is really key, even more so than if you're just going through transitionally. Water. Yeah, do you have a Discord channel? I don't yet. It's something I want to set up, but the website needs to come first. Too many things to do as it is, I'm afraid. But Discord channel is something I'd like to do. Okay, so now that we've got enough scenery in place, let's play with some trains. And fortunately, Ruby took the liberty of setting up an industry switch list. Actually two. I'm going to use the easier one, namely just because I want to make sure we actually have time to get most, if not all, of the switching done. And given how things went last week, I want to make sure that we're giving ourselves an easier load of it. We've got I was just making sure that I've got the rail driver plugged in, so I'm going to go on that front. Now we're going to place some rolling stock. So according to the switch list, what do we need? Okay, we need empty boxcar. So I'm gonna make that an car box because I know my transition era rolling stock really well, but I tend to forget what I have on other fronts. So this is an empty car at the warehouse. Or an empty car. Actually, I need to get myself over to Scotland Yard. So we've got, this is going to the warehouse. CNW is getting loaded to the news, but the new isn't on this section, so we're going to omit that car. We have a empty car going to the paper mill. Let's see. See what kind of Conrail box cards I have. Oh, we'll throw For the fun of it, maybe we'll throw in a Commonwealth boxcar if need be. And Conrail rolling stock. Oh, this was something sent over by Control Point Sims. Seems fitting for today, and it seems fitting for 1979. A patched SD9. So that'll be our motive power for today. So thank you to Control Point Sims for sending this over. Unfortunately, they just recently closed up shop. I'm talking with them about how we could see the Commonwealth stuff see the light of day, hopefully in the future. Scrap gondola. Actually, do we have a car going to the scrap? Yes, Iron Man Scrap has a scrap car. So perfect. That's our scrap car for over there. And that is loaded. We'll load that up. There we go. So we've got a scrap car. Fits nicely. And we need a... Okay, so we need another box car. I'm going to search 60 foot. 60 foot PS2. Probably need that for something. Feed store, beer distributor. Yep, loaded car at King of Grain. So this will be our loaded car at King of Grain. Or that. Yeah, that looks right. What else do we have that we want to get in here? I don't think we have any flatbed. Oh, there's that Commonwealth car. One maybe. Okay, so the Commonwealth's car that can be going to the paper mill, because why not? We need a car that's going to the feed store, dry food, so non-perishables. Odd car. A boxcar 60 foot. Weird 60 foot's in here. 60 foot. Maybe that'll work. Yeah, okay. So this car is going to be... So we've got our warehouse car, our new paper mill car, and our beer distributor. No, not the beer distributor, the feed store car. Meanwhile, we're in the warehouse. We're taking a car from the warehouse to Scotland Yard, so that's going to be a box car. Let's see what we've got for that. Let's see what 50 footers we have. Do we have something a little bit more normal for that? A lot of weird default paint schemes in here. Sure. That's our car that's going back with us to Scotland Yard. Well, this should be interesting. We've got a car going from the paper mill to the news. So let's have that in the mix. Even though I'm mainly trying to focus on operations on this side of the layout. So this car is going from the paper mill to the news. And then I've got the King of Grain car and the Iron Man scrap car. So nothing's originating from the food. Okay, so this might even be a little bit too easy. But I'd rather do too easy and take too long. Yes, Virtual Railroad Academy. I know that is not an Alco But we did have fun with Alcos a couple of weeks ago. There will be more Alcos. There will be more Alcos. And Kootenai Lake had a bunch of them too, so we're good on that front. Let's go back to the Conrail stuff. We want an N7E. Yep, we're going to add a caboose onto this. And yeah, I think that's good enough for us to get going. So we've got a few cars going into the scene. We've got a couple of cars that we're going to be picking up and bringing back with us to Scotland Yard. And we've got a car that is going from within the scene to another part of the scene. And that's another interesting design element, is when you could have cars going from one part of your layout to another, not just everything in and out of staging. So hopefully this switching will go a lot better than last week's, and a lot easier. Maybe I made it too easy on myself, but I didn't want to bore you guys with getting the millions of cars staged, and it helps me to keep track of which is which. So I'm going to turn down the music a wee bit so we can actually hear the sounds of the locomotive at work. All right, here we go. And obviously, in the case of this, unlike Commonwealth and Kootenai Lake, where we were testing if the track would work and be interesting, the track is a fixed entity here. We're not messing with that because we know it's been built in real life, and we know it works. Rudy and Caroline have been running it for quite some time. They know that it works. So there's less guessing on that particular thing. I'm going to just turn that down, make sure you can hear me. Sure that our switch out here is set for the right direction so we're not crashing already. And let's get coupled up to our train. Now, obviously, part of the operation scheme that they've put together for when this ordinarily gets run is that you would have a lot more switching to do in the context of this yard in and of itself. But we're just going for these straight easy, our train's ready to go, and we're just bringing cars back. The SD9 is too big for those curves. It probably is, but we ran the SW1500s last week. Well, I'll tell you what. We do have a different control point Sims loco. I mean, it technically wouldn't be of this era, but because it still has Penn Central on it, but it would fit. So, how do you guys like this? This will not be too big for the curves at hand, so we'll have some fun with this engine. So this is a Conrail engine that has somehow avoided even being patched in the past 3 years. I'll go with it. All right. And now let's get going out of here. I don't know. Rudy, do you actually plan on running 6-axle stuff? Does your layout accommodate that? I mean, the curve radii on the layout, as I recall from him telling me before, are like this is a 21, but most of it is 23. I think it actually should be able to accommodate an SD7 or SD9. But we'll run the SW1500 because why not? And if you guys really want to see the SD9 come back, we can switch it pretty easily. A friend of mine started with Penn Central back in 71 and finished with NS after 41 years with them. Yeah, it's always interesting to see those retirement announcements of where where Norfolk Southern's like, hey, this person started with Penn Central. It's like, it's sort of crazy to think that there's still that, how recent all of that history is. Well, I guess we don't have anything going in and out of the cement plant. Yeah, should have thrown something like that in there for the mix. But we'll have some fun in this area with the warehouse. I have a couple of SD40s and SD45s. Their minimum radius is 23. That makes sense. I love how this looks with coming out of the trees. I think that's a really good transition point. Now, this front car is going to the warehouse, so I feel like, you know, it needs to go to the warehouse. However, it's gonna be a pain to access right now. So I feel like the warehouse is what we'll take care of on the way back once we've had a chance to run around the train as a whole. And then reminding myself that middle car is going to the paper mill, and the rear car is going to the feed store. Oh, the feed store is actually... Oh, feed store is on the other part of the layout. I thought the feed store was the food warehouse. My bad. We're going to pretend that this is going to the food warehouse, just because I don't have anything going there. So. You remember me making videos from 2006? Wow. I appreciate your loyalty. Yeah, 2006 is when I set up the channel and started doing my first video. So, man, I give you huge props if you remember me from that. I really like this as a scene. I'm really happy with how this turned out. And this is another way in which, I mean, you've got these tight curves, but it feels realistic, and also feels like then it gives you a reason to slow down. As well as looking through the partial street running here. I think that's a good scene. Okay, now here we've got to run around, so we'll be all set for tagging on the caboose at the end and all that kind of stuff. These two cars we've got here have got to make their way back. I'm going to put the covered hopper on the train now, because I want to get that out of the way before I take care of runaround moves. We've got this scrap car as well, and that's getting picked up. I don't think we have any cars for drop-off there. I may not do that up. Iron Man scrap. Yep, that's just getting picked up. So we'll take care of that once we've run around things. I'm feeling like I should have given myself more to do with this run, but maybe we'll do something once the layout's complete where I live stream and we just play through a longer switch of it. I feel like I have to learn this railroad better, because where do a longer playthrough and I also write up the right cars, because the cars that he recommended are cars on his layout, and I have to choose cars that I actually have available to me in the sim. So I hope you guys enjoy the playthrough section as much as the build section. Maybe you like the playthrough section even more, because I am contemplating episodes that would be just entirely playthroughs to show how a route runs. to tie in with some of the episodes on what makes this layout great and so forth. So if that's something you want to see, where like we spend 2 or 3 hours just playing with a route and trying a bunch of different operations, do let me know, because I want to be creating content that's enjoyable to you and what you want to live stream and chat with me about. Rudy, oh no, I gave myself plenty. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad I haven't made it too easy on myself. They did a really, for the record, this was a freeware model over on Control Point Sims. Again, I don't know when it'll reappear because they closed down their website, but they did a really nice job on the PBR texturing and the weathering. It just, I mean, it probably looks too shiny for a Penn Central engine. Maybe this, I forget if this is the weathered one or not. Let me bring that up, actually, because I can just swap that out if they, because I think they have both the weathered and the, oh yeah, that is the clean one. Here, let's, there's the weathered one. Now it's, I mean, it's still maybe a bit cleaner than it should be, but it looks at least a little bit more weathered. Okay, so we're getting this on to the, oh, except I have to click on the train. Oh, I don't have an engineer. Ah, jeez. So train Z, you have to give your, every train needs a driver. So I need to go to edit session, driver setup, edit, and we're gonna move him to the engine that still exists. And go back to the game. Sorry about that interruption. Wait, where is he? Oh, we'll just press +1. There we go. Okay. Now we have a driver. Now we can actually move the train back. So I want to get the scrap car, but I want the scrap car to be on the correct side of things. So I think I want to get the caboose on the right side too, because now basically everything's facing the other way in terms of my pickups. So the best way to do that, other than a flying switch, which isn't possible in this game and would also have been outlawed or close to being outlawed by now. We'll just put the whole train in the siding, and then we'll move the caboose around at that point. Because I could still go ahead and make the pickups and then put the caboose on the right side. Yeah, this is a really nifty layout that Rudy and Carolyn have designed for themselves. I look forward to seeing it in real life at some point, because I think it really it looks like a lot of fun, and it's so neat to see a switching layout that supports multiple crews. Now, you're not getting a lot of meets. It is kind of siloed, but to be able to have somebody doing something in Scotland Yard and somebody working this industrial park over here and somebody working Linglestown, I think that it's nifty that everybody gets their own slice of the action. I think that's a really good design element. Okay, now, let's see. We've got these two pickups, or just this pickup over here. That's pretty straightforward. We're setting out this car at the food warehouse, and this car is going to the paper mill, and then so this is paper mill, this is the food warehouse. So that's easy enough. So everything's now essentially trailing point, so we can get set up in the right place for that. I have to say, I think that I'm really happy with how this layout turned out, and hope that you guys enjoyed seeing the process of the scenery evolve with this one as we've gone to work on it. Some layouts like Commonwealth will do start to finish, and you get to see the whole thing, but the larger the layout, the more it has to be just selecting specific aspects of the design to highlight. With this one, I think it was good just to cover all of the big scenery items with you guys. Like the car track sticker, old school. Nice. And I forgot to change the radius of these switches so that I don't have to get so far back from them. But I don't think that's going to be too much of a hindrance tonight. I think we can make all of our work happen relatively easily. You know, I'm actually looking at the time and realize, no, if I want to be done in about 30 minutes, we've got the right amount of work for us. So this car is actually going with us to the news. So it's kind of good that we're getting it first because we want it to be near the front. We're going to have to use that round the loop at the warehouse in the other adjacent scene to cut the car off, run around it again, and then put it back on. Screenshot moment. And hope that you've been finding the stream interesting and the various subjects that we've been talking about tonight. And if you have, I encourage you to subscribe here on YouTube to the Nick Ozrak channel because there's more of this Train Z layout content on the way. Live streaming every month. Roundhouse episode every month where we interview people about all sorts of topics pertaining to the railroad industry and rail preservation. So plenty of fun to be had. Now that scrapyard is also coming back with us. So I guess we can collect it next. I think what we'll do, because the scrapyard, its position in the train doesn't matter, so we could put it next to the caboose, and then we'll switch the position of the cars. And we are putting this one at paper mill, that one at distributor. So actually that raises an interesting point because then that yellow box car is going to the warehouse. So its placement on the train isn't too specific because it's in the right spot. So it actually it's coming back with us. Okay, yep. I know what I want to do. So the yellow box car. Yep, so we're going to take the 3 cars. We're going to dump the 2, and that clears them out. Then we can pick up the scrap car, pick the other 2, put the caboose back on, and we're in good shape. What is this simulator? This is Trains with a Z, specifically Trains Railroad Simulator 19. It's come a long way from when I first reviewed it. I did an At the Rail Yard review of the sim of Train Z way back. Well, I wasn't reviewing the sim itself, but I was reviewing the Reading and Northern route by Josh Drum. And Trains 12, it had significant issues. It really struggled when it came to placing distant scenery. It struggled very heavily with that. So it like you'd have these wide scenes of trees and the distant scenery would pop in and out. It would be really distracting to run, and I talk about that in the review. I gave the route a platinum, but I criticized the sim heavily because I just felt like it was so rough. 10 and 19 have gone a long way to improve on the issues with 12. Not that they're not free of issues themselves. They do have their issues, but I'm satisfied with 19. That's part of the reason why I haven't upgraded to 22 yet, is because this has a lot of what I need functionally. I'm enjoying it, and it's a really comfortable atmosphere. I mean, you see how easy it is to build in this sim. I really enjoy it. It's so much fun. I have fun building routes. I got into building Train Z routes. Initially, I thought that I was going to be in it because I wanted to, specifically because I wanted to play with the end product. But then I just kept starting to build more and more routes, and I realized, oh, maybe the reason I'm building them is because I actually like building them. Kind of a funny accident, and that's why now I'm enjoying live streaming this for you guys. Hopefully you get to pick up on the enjoyment of that, and you're learning things along the way, whether you're a train sim fan or a model railroader. I think you'll be excited for 22, says Kevin. Maybe I will. I have to confess, I haven't really seen any. I gather the Surveyor has some neat tools, and maybe I'll like learning that at some point. I haven't really seen a lot that makes me go, oh, I really need this thing, yet. Maybe my opinion of that'll change, but so far, my understanding is it's outside of the changes that they're making to this simulator. I feel like the sim itself is actually pretty similar, which isn't bad, but I'd like to see, for a whole version change, I'd like to see more improved than just the Surveyor. I actually don't have this one. Is the track easy to lay? Because the other sims I used, it's confusing to build stuff. I think it's easy to lay. We didn't do any track lane today, but if you want to check out either the Kootenai Lake Navigation Company build or the Commonwealth build, you can watch some of the track lane in progress, and that'll give you a sense of what to expect. And I think that it's easy to work with. There are some tricks with getting the track to do what you want it to, especially when it comes to making switches look good. But once you play around with it enough, you start to learn how to navigate that. Yeah, good question. And the next route that I'm building in for a live stream, I will be laying the track in so that's going to be in a month, and you'll get to see that process unfold. Yes, well, fortunately, I do think that I haven't quite skunked myself into complex operations this week, which is kind of nice. Because I can see what I want to do, and it's not terribly impossible, which is good. Okay, so we're going to leave these cars here. And we're going to pick up the other two on the other track, pick these up, go back over, and that'll give us a chance to drop off that CP boxcar at the warehouse. And then from there, we'll head over to the warehouse area. We have a set out, pick up, and then we've got to take this orange boxcar in front of us to the new. I avoided the brewery, smart. Give yourself credit on that one, Rudy, because you're the one who gave me this switch list, and you didn't put any brewery cars on it. Because, yes, I can see that if you've got cars coming in and out of the brewery and you only have so much headroom, that could make it challenging. Again, maybe once this one's released, we'll come back to it and we'll do a full up session of it, and we'll make a whole complicated switch list and everything. And see what it's like to run the gamut, so to speak. So I'm going to pick up these cars here. And then I'm going to pick up the scrap car, put it all on the train, get it switched back. Brewery can be an hour drill. Yeah, I believe it. With where the switches are placed, yeah. So, as I say, maybe next time that we come back here for a live stream, we'll do the full complicated Monty of a thing. I will say this has been a fun build. Not that it's complete. I will have to give it a bit more visually going on, but and final bits of polish. But I like it as a change of pace from what I might myself gravitate towards. I don't know how many modelers do post-transition era stuff. I feel like pre-transition era or transition era is kind of the most common that you see modeled. Heck, that's what I do. Do any of you guys model post or intend to model like anything, say, post 1965? Even if you're watching this on repeat, leave your comments. I'd be curious to see what you have going on in your model railroading lives. Double Tube Fan 5, do I have a stream schedule? Yes, so my intention at this point is third Thursday of the month, 7 p.m. Eastern. So like we're doing today, third Thursday will be when the streams are. That's probably going to be when the streams are. The live or the edited episodes of what makes this layout great, I don't know that I could commit to a schedule on those. That's kind of a case of be pleasantly surprised. But if you guys are good with Thursdays at 7, or third Thursdays at 7, then that's what we'll stick with. Railroad guy, you modeled preservation era. I feel like a lot of folks do. I mean, there's the allure of steam in general. And for me, I was just raised because my dad grew up right at the transition point from steam to diesel in Canada, and both CP and CN were running steam well into 1960. So there's that rubbed off on me and has influenced my model railroading taste. I had this idea that at some point I was going to become a Pennsy modeler because I lived in Pennsylvania. That never manifested. Now I live in Virginia, and I'm surrounded by the Norfolk and Western, and maybe someday I'll get into that. I have to admit that it would be tempting to have a Broadway Limited Y6B, but I don't know that I'd ever see modeling the N&W, just because, my goodness, like, just the motive power alone, it would be a cool thing to have. It'd be massively expensive. I do have a virtual track plan, or not even a track plan. There's a layout I've completed called N&W in the 50s. The Trains a New Era version's up. I'm finalizing the Trains 19 version. That's actually supposed to be the next episode of what makes this layout great. Is this huge N&W layout, all the motive power you'd want. You know, you've got the M class with the Abingdon branch. You've got M class with the Abingdon branch. You have mainline passenger with the J's, mainline fast freights with the A's, coal drags, mine runs with the Y's. It's phenomenal, and that's how I scratch the itch when it comes to big N&W power. And I have a couple of N&W track plans that I want to live stream the builds of here. 1990s Rio Grande. That'd be interesting to see. And RWS Baden. Modeling 68 to 75. Good era. Gives you some interesting kind of late Gen 1, early Gen 2 diesel power to work with. For a little bit, I was really into modeling Boston and Maine transition era, but that flared out. that's part of why I've gone into doing this show as well, is that I think that testing these routes is a good exercise in knowing what's going to stick. Like, yes, that one train set may look cool, but is that something you're going to really want to run consistently? I mean, yeah, you can model HO and then, have guest appearances by special trains. But if you've built a switching layout, like, you wouldn't want to build something like this and then realize that switching isn't for you and actually what you really want is passenger runs. Because this is not designed for that at all. Like, the closest you could make it into a passenger layout, if you were going to, and you could, but it's screaming for switching. The only way that you'd make this a passenger layout is if you had a station over here and a station over here, and you were running bud cars. I think that's really what it would require. And even then, it feels so much like you're shoehorning it in. So, while you could change specifically the types of motive power you run, it is true that you want to be mindful of what operations fit with that. John, you look forward to the N&W Steam because you love N&W Steam. Yeah, I mean, I will say, so do I think N611 gets overhyped? Yes, I do. But is it at the end of the day a cool engine? Well, having spent a day with it in Strasbourg last fall, where I covered it for an episode of the Roundhouse and had the opportunity to ride on their open air car right behind the engine, and get to toot the whistle, get a cab tour. Yeah, it is actually really cool. Again, not saying it isn't overhyped, but yeah, I do think it actually is cool. Okay, here we go. Our last drop-off in this sector of the layout. And we haven't even had to use the fast-forward button today, which is kind of nice. So. And now I have 2 cats on my desk. Saying, hey, it's getting close to... Not for nothing, but it is getting close to feeding time. Isn't that right, boys? I'm on trains myself on a custom route I made to run in and around the Appalachian Mountains in mid-1980s. Something a little bit similar to San Juan Branch Line. Sounds good, Z Photography. 611 definitely gets overhyped. Yeah, I agree with that. And for me, I'm always interested in what are the things not being talked about. I mean, yes, sometimes I'll cover the obvious, as I did with 611. But I do like being able to find hidden gems. The last episode that I did of the podcast, where I interviewed Cheryl Engelhardt, who's a New Age artist. That was fun. And that was something different. Screenshot moment. Should also get set up over at the bridge. That's going to be another screenshot moment. You did fireman double tube. I did fireman duty on 611. Her first appearance in Strasbourg in 2019. Best 30 minutes ever spent. Even if I feel the logo is kind of ugly. Well, kudos to you for doing that, even if you felt it was ugly. I like 475 because it ran on the Avenue branch to West Jefferson, North Carolina as my home state. Well, actually, 475 I don't think there's any record of it running on the Abingdon branch. Its sister 382 did, the 396 and the 429 were the main Abingdon engines. The 475 was primarily used on the Christiansburg branch, which was further north. It was north of the Abingdon branch. But I'm not aware of it having been used on the Abingdon. Okay, so as a reminder of what we are doing here, this rail box is getting swapped out for this red car. This car needs to go to the news, which means we're going to need to run around it. So let's... does the order matter? Probably not here. We're going to get this car off. We're going to put it on the passing track so that we're in position to run around it. And I suppose we'll set ourselves up to go into the town because that is where we're going next. Now, 475 has been dressed up as 382 for photo charters because it is one of the only two M-Class engines left. So it fits that need very well. I think we can clear it before having to blow for the crossing. It's getting so much flack from you guys last time for not blowing for the crossing, but this time it's not going to be an issue because we barely had to deal with crossings. Part of me thinks that one could create an interesting challenge by putting a grade crossing here, but given the brewery size, I think we'll probably omit it. We could have put one there, but I prefer the concrete over the overpass. Okay. Now we're going to get this one set up, ready to be run around. Nice areas and scenery you've made. Question, is this like a model railroad setup? Because if so, good job on the details. It is not only just a model railroad setup, it is a model railroad. Specifically, we are modeling, here in the sim, I've taken the track plan of the P&L secondary, which is a fictional Conrail branch, because I was commissioned by Rudy, who's in the stream with us tonight, or in the comment section. I was commissioned to make this train layout because he's laid the track down. So all the track you see here is as it is in on his layout, and it's already been laid down. And so what I'm doing here is I've been commissioned to help him and his wife determine the best way of maximizing the scenery opportunities, how to make everything fit visually. And so that was the main purpose of this exercise. Was the track was a fixed point. We couldn't change anything with the track, but how do we make the scenery work around it? And I'm really happy with how this looks as a whole. Oh, we're getting a cameo of Alco's tail. Alco, come on. Here's Alco. As you can see, he's not very thrilled to be picked up and put on camera. But Alco, you can't go blocking my camera. You just cannot be doing that. Oh, throwback to when 475 was Rainbow Sun. Yeah, that was nifty. Alco. No, we'll let it go for the time being. Really cool idea to build a model layout in the sim to see if you like it before you build one for real for thousands of dollars. Exactly. And there's two big benefits. The pre-visualization of being able to see what this is going to look like before you actually commit to it, especially if you're getting into mountains and big, complicated landscaping. And second, to make sure that it'll actually be fun to play, because, you know, some people say no layout is ever done I don't subscribe to that philosophy. I believe that it's good to have an endpoint in sight, or at the very least, that even if you're working on the scenery, you're going to want to play with it, and you're going to want to have fun while playing with it. I think that's important. And so, to, I think that's worth exploring, and that's what we're doing here on the show. And learning from other track plans and discovering, okay, so on paper this looks good, but if we actually build it, is it as fun as it's supposed to be? Why or why not? Yes, well, as you can see, Alco's a black cat, and Alcos emit black smoke, so it just felt fitting. Nick, if you like NNW Steam, look for the videos from Heron Rail called Pillars of Smoke in the Sky. I will make a point to look that up, Rich. Thanks. It has helped us with some of our scene. I'm so glad that it's helped you out. I look forward to seeing how you guys end up making your layout come to life scenically. Because I think that there's just so much potential. Even if you don't do exactly what I've kind of developed for you here, there's a lot to go off of. The key is just there's no with all the amount of switching involved. There's never going to be such a thing as too much detail. Ever you are going to have plenty of time to be looking at these different sections of the layout, so you make them count, make them look super shiny or super grungy, but make them fit for what you're going for. Also, GSVP and NW Steam videos are great. Good to know, Andrew. I'll look into that. I know it's been talked about a lot, but are you planning on doing a Roundhouse episode on 2102? Yeah, if I can get a hold of Andy Muller. I interviewed him back in 2016. It's called, I think I called the episode RDC Adventure. So, my wife and I did a trip on the Reading and Northern's Bud cars. They were advertising this sort of shuttle service from Pottstown to Jim Thorpe, and it just seemed like a really fun trip for us to do together, where you'd get on the train and actually have a specific destination to go to. So we did that, and I did that as an episode, and I interviewed people involved with the railroad, and Andy was our engineer for that trip. So I got to talk to him, I got to interview him. So I just need to get a hold of him again, and then I think a 2102 episode could definitely happen. Because he definitely, there's so much to talk to about the Reading and Northern in general, because there's a company that really understands having pride in one's image and offering such a really interesting diversity of services. Way beyond 2102. 2102 is good. For me, it's more like I'd probably pester the poor guy and say, okay, when is 1098 going to get restored? Because that's the Canadian Pacific steam nut in me. We're leaving the hopper here because we need to, well, I don't know. I suppose we'll get it, and then that way we'll tack it onto the train and it's ready to go. It's kind of a, can go either way on that one, but we'll pick it up. I don't know that we save too much time one way or another on that one. At my work, we have a sandpiper that nested on our feet. Switch the plant. If you're doing scenery, don't forget to add wildlife. Sometimes that the morn bird ruffles her feathers at our local, or the mom bird ruffles her feathers at our local. It's so funny. Yeah, there's, well, we did add a moose famously on the Kootenai Lake, so yeah, I'm all for adding little scenic details, and I like putting little Easter eggs in the context of these routes, so we'll definitely see more wildlife. Yeah, I think actually, you know, for all my fears about maybe I made it too easy, this was just the right level of switching. I mean, yes, I like complicated switching as much as the next guy, but A, I didn't want to keep you guys on for too late, and B, I wanted to make sure that I could actually handle it, because this is manageable switching, but when I was live streaming, you know, live streaming and talking and switching at the same time can get to be a lot, and then I sort of lose sight. Like, this is clearly, when you get into some of the more complex jobs, I mean, even this cement plant, like, switching this out is also going to be a bear, because either you've got to take the cars with you all the way to the big runaround, or switch them using this 2-car runaround. Like, there's obviously a lot of ways in which you can lose yourself in the switching. So to be able to not have to totally immerse myself in the switching and being able to talk to you guys is a good thing. So at this point, all we've got left is we just got to take this boxcar to the news, where Huey Lewis is the editor, of course. And this is just a simple drop, then we'll come back to these cars, and then we'll be set to go back to Scotland Yard. So that'll tie up very nicely. Hope that you've been enjoying the live stream, and do so I mentioned this earlier, but I do want feedback from you guys. Do you want to see an episode where we just spend the 2 or 3 hours playing a route and just driving different services? Especially for the bigger routes, like that NNW route that I was telling you about, which is going to be the next episode of what makes this layout great. I have this, there we go. I have this idea of doing a live stream of that, and we would spend, it'd be, you know, 2-3 hours, but it'd be a variety of services. So there'd be the Virginia Creeper, there'd be a coal drag, there'd be a mine run. So it'd be, you know, would it be staring at the same train for 3 hours? Is that something that you would like to have just ops episodes, ops live streams? Railroad guy, yes, please do that. Z photography, sure, I'm down for something like that. Good to know, because I'll definitely keep that in mind. Because I think that we could talk about, like, I could use the live stream to talk about design elements as well, and what I like about a layout. But also, it just gives you a sense of different types of play. And you get to see the thing as a whole. I mean, hopefully, by now, you've been looking at this route enough that you're getting a sense of the geography of how it all pieces together. And that is the goal. Okay, we're aligned to the news. And we're gonna go to ground level. You know, I like how this, even looking from here, from Moomoo's, the best place in Lingelstown, and looking towards the industries here, I think that this looks really good. I think this is a good way to block the scenery. And I timed it a little bit off. Don, you'd be interested. Rich, I like watching the build and then watching an op session. And that's mostly what we're going to do. I don't think that shift is going to change a whole lot. But just certain episodes I'd like to do, because I think they'll tie in nicely, especially to see the edited episode and you get glimpses of the layout. And kind of a, you know, at the nutshell version, but then to expand that further. We'll see how it goes with the N and W. And here we are back in what we worked on last month. Okay, we'll get ourselves set up to set this car off. All right, let's go in the cab for this one. Look at that. A model of perfect crossing safety. RY Guy Gaming, got any extra cheese in that boxcar? No, that was going to the news, but I get what you're referencing. And it was great to have you tune in yesterday to Railroaders Play Railroads Online. And now we're seeing a cameo from my other boy, who took the webcam with him. Come on, Luca. Sorry about that, folks. Got so flustered there, forgot to set the switches. Oh well. Sorry about that. All right. So, I've actually got both of this, which is not where I want to be. So we're gonna clear that. We're gonna shut back. Yeah, I think this was originally a jointed rail SW1500, and they do really good work as well. So this is a reskin by the team at Control Point Sims. It's been really good to have you guys along tonight. I hope that you've been enjoying this as much as I have. This is a lot of fun for me to kind of give you a glimpse into the world of what I do when it comes to building these train sim layouts and helping with pre-visualization. And again, if you have a layout or a project where you feel like this would be helpful, you want to pre-visualize scenes, you want to do play testing, reach out to me. theroundhousepodcast.com. There's a contact me form there, and that's a perfect way to get a hold of me. The Great Train Layouts website is coming along. It will hopefully be done next month for the next stream. I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. Now we're just getting our train and bringing it all back to Scotland Yard. These streams are very enjoyable. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, Railroad Guy. Thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, I'm, I wasn't certain about how many buildings I would have here, but I think this is the right balance. It's just not too cluttered, not too involved. Obviously, you could add, and probably will for the final version, add parked vehicles and that kind of thing along these spots here, but we've got a good sense of what we're going towards here, and I think that's what's important. So rather than coming along the main line, I'm actually going to take the yard lead this time and just get my switches set for that. So that'll put us into a different part of the yard. That's okay. It's also interesting when running in the sim to see what actual speed we're going at. Because a lot of times on model railroads, you have to go slower than you would in real life to make it seem credible. And here we are just crawling along at 11 miles per hour, which is nothing. But given how tight the curves are, it would feel odd to go much faster than this. Iron Horse Productions. Hello, well, glad you could join us. Unfortunately, we're coming up on the end of our stream tonight, but glad you could see a little something. And here we are coming around. So this is technically the yard lead, but gives us a chance to run something different. And then coming into the yard by the yard office. Oh. Nope, don't want to get hit by the train. There we go. Rich, yes, I'm enjoying these YouTube streams, being familiar with MSTS and Dovetail games. This is great to look at the train simulator. Well, glad that this is providing a good window of opportunity, as it were. Great track sounds on some of these cars, by the way. Well, have fun on your Lancaster trip, Iron Horse. So there we have it. And that was about an hour from when we placed the cars to actually getting back. So that was a good op session. So that timed out perfectly. Clearly, I didn't make it too easy on myself. And again, I could see us coming back here for another, maybe 6 months or so, and having a more in-depth operating session once the scenery is complete, and really going nuts with the switching. So, we'll take one final look at everything that is the Conrail P&L secondary. We've got Scotland Yard over here, which has a crew dedicated to just switching the cars here, because you could have the trains come in and kind of blocked messes, and then have to pull the cars off that are going to get worked on the branch. You have 2 different crews for the branch, so those could be separated to different tracks. There's a lot you could do with just the switching even within this yard. We have the town of Linglestown here, with a nice variety of commercial, light industry businesses being switched by rail. We have the cement plant, the warehouse, and I think what I'm really most proud of that we've accomplished tonight is this sort of derelict factory and this viaduct scene. Stone viaduct. Coming on to some street running, we go by King of Grain, the brewery, scrapyard, paper mill, and the food distributor. And this is what we're looking at as a whole. I think this is a really nifty track plan. I think that this holds a lot of replay value. It's something that works as an individual experience that you can run on your own. It works as something that if you had a crew of 3 different train crews out there, that everybody can kind of have their own thing to do with a lot, you keep feeding cars to the staging, you could keep this going for a long time and replicate multiple days within an operating session. There's a lot of, because I could see doing a 9-hour op session where you'd have a mixture of crew. So you work maybe the staging crew, then you work the Linglestown job, then you work the industrial park job for the third, and so much cycle. I think that this layout has a lot of great, has a great future. This will be released publicly for Trains with a Z Railroad Simulator 19 for you to download and play with in the future. That's going to be available on the website that I'm working to build at the moment. You'll be able to download and play with this. This layout is going to exist in real life, and maybe once Rudy and Carolyn get an opportunity to start doing some scenery work, then I'll share some photos from that, and we can see how the pre-visualization led to the final product. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate your support. If you haven't already subscribed on YouTube, youtube.com/NickOzorak. That is OZORAK. Subscribe, and you'll get notifications of when we're going live. Again, we're going to make that every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Every third Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So that's what you could expect on that front. We've got episodes of the Roundhouse podcast, episodes of What Makes This Layout Great, and all sorts of random content that comes along the way. So check that out. You can like us on Facebook, Great Train Layouts. And if you want to go that extra step in supporting this show and the creative endeavors I'm doing, patreon.com/theroundhouse. And that's a great way to be able to, for just as little as $1 a month, you're going a long way to making this content possible. And I really appreciate the support. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I hope you've had as much fun as I have. I'm Nick Ozorak, and you've just watched a great train layout live. Good night.